My name is Linda Myers. I'm 30 years old. The last gift my mother ever gave me was a choice, my sister, or the door. I chose the door. I was 18. My savings account had just been drained to zero, and everything I owned still fit in one backpack. For 5 years after that night, nobody in my family dialed my number. Then, on a Tuesday in March, my mother called me in tears and said the line she'd apparently been saving up, "Your sister needs you." When I finally learned the real reason behind that call, I sat alone in my car in a hospital parking lot and laughed until my ribs ached. But the laughing wasn't the ending. It was barely the beginning. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet people finally get to tell their side, stories about family, betrayal, and the moment someone decides enough is enough. If you've ever been called the strong one right before they handed you the bill, this one's for you. Drop a comment, tell me where you're listening from, and subscribe so you don't miss how it ends. I grew up in a 2-story house outside Columbus, Ohio, with a cross-stitched sign in the living room that read "Family First." My mother, Carol, stitched it herself. I used to believe it. It took years to notice the sign never specified which family member came first. That house ran on a simple system with exactly 2 jobs in it. My sister Vanessa, 4 years older, held the first job, being fragile. She was the pretty one, the sensitive one, the one whose feelings could be bruised by a weather report. Her job came with full benefits. My job was the other one. When Vanessa was 12 and knocked our mother's casserole dish off the counter, I was 8, and I was the one handed the broom. Nobody announced it, you just understood it, the way you understand which chair is Dad's. When I brought home straight A's, the report card stayed on the fridge maybe 3 days. Vanessa's certificate for a middle school choir hung framed in the hallway for a decade. I'm not saying my parents didn't love me, I'm saying their love for me came in exactly one flavor: confidence. Confidence that I'd manage. That I'd cope, adjust, absorb, and clean up. In our house, "You're so strong" was never a compliment that stood on its own. I learned to flinch at it the way a waitress flinches when a table of 12 walks in, because in the Myers family, praise for me always traveled with luggage. Someone was about to hand me something heavy, and the compliment was the receipt. I just didn't know yet how heavy that luggage could get. I found out the spring I turned 18. At 15, I started running a register at Hartman's Grocery, for evenings a week plus Saturdays. I had one goal, and it was laminated: nursing school. The bank wouldn't let a minor open a savings account alone, so my mother co-signed as joint owner. Remember that detail. For 3 years I deposited nearly every paycheck. Birthday money went in. Christmas money went in. I skipped the senior class trip to Chicago and put that in too. By spring of senior year, the balance read $9,300. I looked at that number the way other girls looked at prom dresses. Meanwhile, Vanessa was running the opposite experiment. She started community college and quit after 1 semester. She married a long-haul trucker named Cole a month after meeting him, had a daughter, Lily, at 21, and separated from Cole before Lily could walk. She and the baby lived in an apartment 15 minutes from my parents, and my parents quietly covered most of the rent, the way you pay a bill you're embarrassed by. I loved Lily from day one. That tiny girl with the serious eyes had no part in what her mother later did. The week I turned 17 and a half, I circled a date on my calendar, my 18th birthday, the day I could finally open my own account under my own single signature. I wasn't paranoid, I was raised in that house, fluent in it. I planned to move every dollar the morning I turned 18. My mother beat me to it by 9 days. I found out at an ATM outside Hartman's on a Thursday after my shift. I'd stopped to deposit my check like always. The receipt read, "Available balance, $0." I stood there in my work polo reading that slip like it was written in another language. I fed my card back in and checked again, because a glitch seemed more likely than the truth. Then I drove home, walked into the kitchen, and set the receipt in front of my mother. She didn't pretend surprise. She kept drying a pot while she explained, Vanessa was 4 months behind on rent. The car was about to be repossessed, and a mother with a baby can't be without a car. She said, family, the way other people say, obviously. My father studied the salt shaker like it owed him money. I asked when they'd planned to tell me. My mother finally set the pot down and gave me the look reserved for when I was being difficult, which in our house meant inconvenient. They'd planned to explain it all at dinner, she said. Vanessa's crisis didn't wait for birthdays. Then came the sentence that had run my whole childhood, the one I could stitch on a pillow from memory: "You're the strong one, Linda. You'll be fine." No mention of paying it back. None. That was the part that rearranged something in my chest. It had never been a loan in their minds, it had never been my money at all. It was the family emergency fund, and I was the family's emergency employee, and the emergency was always going to be Vanessa. I didn't scream. I went upstairs and made calls, because even at 18 that was who I was. The bank was polite and useless: joint account, joint owner, every withdrawal legal as sunlight. The woman on the phone was kind. People are usually kind when they're handing you nothing. Friday morning I called the non-emergency police line and described it, and the officer sighed the sigh of a man who'd heard this exact story before. "If her name's on the account," he said, "it's not theft. No crime here, miss. Just family." People love to ask why I didn't fight it. I did fight it, and lost within 24 hours, on the merits, to a rulebook my mother had signed us both into when I was 15. Saturday, my parents called me down to the kitchen. A typed page sat on the table. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. The header read, "Family Loan Agreement," but the text underneath said the $9,300 had been my voluntary, freely offered gift to my sister, no repayment expected. All it needed was my signature. My mother held out a pen and explained that signing would let us all move forward without ugliness. I asked what happened if I didn't. Her voice went flat and smooth as a frozen lake. "Under this roof, we are a family. If you can't live with that, Linda, there's the door." I looked at my father. He looked at the table. I went upstairs, pulled my old backpack from the closet, and started folding. You'd be surprised what makes the cut when your whole life has to fit in one bag: 2 work polos, jeans, my documents in a plastic folder, birth certificate, social security card, and that ATM receipt, folded once, because some part of me already suspected I might need proof someday that I wasn't crazy. And one photo: Lily on her first birthday, cake on her fists, laughing at something off camera. I took the picture of my sister's daughter, and not one picture of my sister. Make of that what you will. Nobody stood at the door to stop me, which told me everything about how this scene was supposed to end. I was supposed to get scared on the porch and come back in and sign. My mother stayed in the kitchen. Through the doorway I watched her wipe an already clean counter. My father stood in the garage doorway, hands in his pockets. As I passed, he pressed something into my palm without a word and turned to study the lawnmower. 2 folded 20s. $40. My father's entire testimony on the matter. I sat behind the wheel of my car, mine, legally, bought used with cash and titled in my name because Hartman's manager had warned me exactly this might happen, and waited to feel something enormous. Here's what I actually felt: quiet. It had taken them 19 years to teach me the lesson, but I finally had it word for word. Love in that house was a bill, and the bill was always addressed to me. I drove to my coworker Rachel's place and slept on her couch. Nobody called. I'll compress the next 5 years, because I refuse to make them sound sadder than they were. I slept on Rachel's couch 6 weeks, paying her in groceries. I took a 6-week CNA course, the cheapest ticket into healthcare that exists, and started at a rehab facility, wiping down handrails, learning that bodies and families fail in similar ways. I worked 2 jobs and chipped through my prerequisites at community college, 1 class at a time. At 20 I got into a 2-year nursing program on a partial scholarship and a federal loan. I studied in break rooms, in my car. At 22, I passed my boards on the first try and cried in the testing center parking lot, the only crying I permitted myself that whole era. By 23, I was a pediatric nurse at a children's hospital in Columbus, signing a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment. The second bedroom was meant to be an office. Remember that too. Now the other ledger. In 5 years, my family called 0 times. Not my birthday, not Christmas, not the day I pinned on my nursing badge, the local paper even spelled my name right. I counted the whole way. Nurses are good at charts. I'd love to say I healed the deeper thing too, but honesty is the house style here. I just relocated it. I became the nurse who covered everyone's shifts. For years without a real vacation. Being needed was the only dialect of love I'd ever been taught, and I still spoke it fluently. I'd only changed who I spoke it to. Then, one Tuesday night in March, I was 23, and my phone rang at 9:40. The screen showed a number I hadn't seen in 5 years but knew the way you know your own hand, the house line. My parents were the last 2 people in Ohio still paying for a landline, which tells you plenty about how they felt about change generally. I stood in my kitchen in scrubs, holding tea gone cold, and let it ring 3 times before something older than my judgment answered for me. My mother was crying before I said hello. Real crying. I'll be fair, my mother's tears were always real. They were just never spent on me. Linda, thank God. Your sister needs you. Not hello. Not a late happy birthday, 5 of them overdue. Not how are you safe, did you eat, where do you live? I stood very still through 4 minutes of weather from a country I'd emigrated out of. Vanessa was in trouble. Vanessa was overwhelmed. Vanessa was fragile. This could destroy Vanessa. The call was about my sister, the way every call in that house had ever been about my sister. My own name mostly showed up attached to a verb they needed done. I noticed my hands were perfectly steady. That scared me more than the call. Needs me for what? I finally asked, and my mother's crying downshifted, smooth as an automatic transmission, into the warm managerial tone I remembered from that kitchen table. Come home Sunday, she said. We'll explain everything as a family. There it was, that word, back from the dead, aimed at me like the last 5 years were just a scheduling mix-up. I didn't say yes. I said the thing that changed everything, give me the caseworker's name. Silence on a landline has a particular texture, like a house holding its breath. My mother said too quickly that it wasn't like that, just a misunderstanding with some agency people. Agency people. My stomach understood before I did. This wasn't rent money. There was a child in this story. I told her good night, and at 8 the next morning, my day off, I called Franklin County Children's Services and asked for the caseworker on Lily Cole's file. Being a pediatric nurse gets you through that particular phone tree faster than most. I knew which words to say and which extension to ask for. The caseworker was Dana Alvarez, a voice like a woman with 40 files on her desk and no time to decorate a sentence. I trusted her within a minute on that basis alone. Here's what she was allowed to tell me, and what my mother had somehow left out entirely. 3 weeks earlier, on a Friday night, Vanessa had left Lily home alone in her apartment and driven across the county line to a casino with a boyfriend. Lily was 6. A neighbor heard crying through the wall around midnight and called 911. Police found her alone on the couch, TV on, a box of dry cereal beside her. Vanessa came home at noon Saturday. She was charged with child endangering, a first offense misdemeanor, and the county opened a case. Lily had been staying with my parents since. I wrote it all down on the back of an electric bill, block letters, the way you chart a patient you can't afford to get wrong. Then Alvarez said, "There's a complication with the grandparents' home study. Are you calling as a placement option?" I told her I didn't know yet what I was calling as. Then I spent 2 days finding out what complication meant. That's when the laughing started. Piece 1, from Alvarez, my parents' home study had failed, and not for age or finances. It failed because Vanessa had moved into their house, into my old room, I'd learn later, and I've filed that under details that no longer surprise me, and the county required that Vanessa, whose contact with Lily was supposed to be supervised, live somewhere else. My parents refused. My mother told the caseworker, in writing, that no one had the right to put her own daughter out of her own home. Sit with that sentence a second. Piece 2 came in my mother's next call, sweet as pie filling, laying out the family plan. Linda, honey, it's all just paperwork. You've got the clean record, the good job, the nice apartment. Lily gets registered at your address, the county checks its boxes, and things go back to normal. She'd stay with us and her mama most of the time, you wouldn't hardly have to do a thing. You're the only one whose background comes up clean. Honey, you work in that world. They'll listen to you. And there was the whole machine, laid out on a lit table. If nobody qualified, Lily went to foster care, and the county's clock was already running. They didn't want their daughter back. They wanted an address, a clean record to rent, the way you rent a storage unit. I sat in my car in the hospital lot after a 12-hour shift and laughed until my ribs hurt and my eyes ran, because I finally saw it whole. The clean record was the punchline. The stable job, the spotless background, the license, every single thing they needed from me existed only because they'd thrown me away. Their punishment had built their only exit. And they didn't even hear the joke. If you've ever gotten that call, the one where they suddenly remember your number because they need something, you know that laugh. It isn't a happy sound. It's the sound of finally seeing the whole machine at once. If you've heard it too, tell me in the comments, and hit subscribe, because what my family asked me to do next deserves witnesses. I didn't laugh long. Somewhere across town, a 6-year-old was sleeping in a house run by the same 2 rules that had chewed up her mother and me, just from different ends. And a county clock was running toward a stranger's spare bedroom. Monday, I called Dana Alvarez back and said a line I'd rehearsed in the shower like a speech. I'd like to be evaluated as a kinship placement. The real kind, full home study, background check, no shortcuts. I heard her pen stop. Then the second, slower part, because it was the actual decision, and anything my family tells you, verify with me directly. From now on, everything I do in this case happens in daylight. Alvarez was quiet a moment. People in her job can hear the difference between a volunteer and a recruit. I think she was checking which one I was. Then she started reciting requirements in her flat checklist voice: fingerprints, references, income verification, home inspection, and honestly, the list relaxed me. Rules are just fairness with the emotion drained out, and I'd been starving for fairness my whole life. My mother called that night to see if I'd come around. I said I'd do it for Lily, the real version, not the paper version. My mother exhaled, satisfied, said she knew I'd step up, that she'd told everyone I would, that I was always the strong one. I let her have that. Some people you correct. Some you just stop translating for. She heard yes and hung up happy, with no idea we'd just agreed to 2 different stories and only one of us could be right. Sunday I drove to the house to meet the stakes. 5 years gone and the house hadn't moved an inch. Family First still hung over the couch. Vanessa's choir certificate still hung in the hallway, gold sticker fading. My sister came at me arms wide, crying my name like the last 5 years were just a road trip I'd taken. She looked older than 27 around the eyes. I always told people my little sister would come through, she announced to the room, hugging me, and I stood there being hugged and heard the sentence for what it was, not gratitude, a job posting filled. My mother beamed at the reunion she was already planning to describe at church. My father held his coffee mug like a man at a bus stop in bad weather. And on the far end of the couch, taking up as little space as a person can take, sat a 6-year-old with her ankles crossed and her hands in her lap. Lily. Vanessa's coloring, none of Vanessa's noise. I watched her the whole visit, and here's what a pediatric nurse sees: a kid tracking every adult in the room like a little air traffic controller. She got her own water from the tap, standing on a stool someone had put there for exactly that purpose, drank it, washed the cup, dried it, put it away. 6 years old. Nobody noticed but me, because in that house, self-sufficiency in a child wasn't a flag, it was a convenience. I recognized that ankle-crossed stillness from old family photos. Mine. When I got up to leave, Lily slid off the couch and followed me to the door, working up her courage. Then, very quietly, looking at my knees, "Are you the aunt with the apartment?" So they'd discussed the plan in front of her, 6 years old, and she already knew she was a package with a shipping question. I crouched down, told her yes, I was her Aunt Linda, and that my apartment had a whole bedroom nobody was using. She nodded once, filed it, and walked back to her end of the couch. I drove home doing math on the county's clock. Then the county came to do math on me. If you've never been through a kinship home study, here's the flavor: 2 months of proving to strangers, with documents, that your life holds weight. Fingerprints rolled at a BCI office. Income verified. Lease copied. 3 references, none related to me, the easiest requirement, since no one related to me had spoken to me in 5 years. A worker walked my apartment checking window locks and smoke alarms, asked where the child would sleep, and I stood in the doorway of my office that never was and heard myself say, "Right here." I moved my desk into the living room that weekend. I switched from nights to days, losing the differential pay, the first real money this fight cost me, and I want that noted. I paid it without blinking. One afternoon, across my own kitchen table, Alvarez looked up from her clipboard and asked a question that wasn't on the list. "Why did you leave home at 18? I gave it to her straight and short: the savings account, the paper I wouldn't sign, the door. She wrote for a while, longer than my answer took. I didn't know then what that note would become. I found out in November. While the paperwork ground along, the county approved weekend visits, and that's how I learned who Lily Cole actually was. The first Saturday, she walked in carrying her own duffel and toured the apartment like a health inspector, silent, thorough, touching nothing. Then, in the kitchen, 3 questions in order, like she'd drafted them in the car. Which food am I allowed to eat? I opened a cabinet and told her that shelf was hers, anything with a blue sticker fair game, anytime, no asking. Where do I go when you have company? Nowhere, I said, this is your place too, and if I ever had company, she'd be the company I introduced first. She turned that one over like a coin she suspected was counterfeit. What happens if I break something? And there it was, the whole biography in one question. I took a glass down, handed it to her, and told her the truth: things break, we sweep, nobody eats a broom over it. Then I gave her a plastic cup, told her the world record for dropping it was 11 times, and she was welcome to try for 12. First almost smile. She dropped it 9 times before dinner. But Saturday night told the real story. I passed her room and eased the door open to check on her, a nurse's habit. She was asleep on top of the made bed, not under the covers, still in her day clothes. Her sneakers stood side by side against the bed frame, toes pointed at the door. I stood in that doorway a long time. I know packed and ready when I see it. I invented packed and ready. Her second weekend, I found the rest of it. Sunday morning she was watching cartoons while I vacuumed her room, and the vacuum head knocked against something under the bed. I got down and pulled out a small pink backpack, kindergarten-sized, zipped full. I shouldn't have opened it. I'm glad I did. 2 outfits folded with a care that would shame most adults. A toothbrush in a sandwich bag. A box of raisins. A stuffed rabbit with one ear worn to the fabric, packed last, on top, where it could be reached fast. She had brought a go-bag to her aunt's house for a weekend. I was still kneeling there when I felt her in the doorway. She didn't panic, didn't even look surprised. She looked the way a kid looks when the teacher finds the note, resigned to explaining the obvious. I keep it packed so it doesn't hurt when they forget me somewhere, she said, level, reciting a house rule. And I knelt on that carpet holding the strap and was 18 again in an upstairs bedroom, folding 2 work polos and a plastic folder of documents into a bag because the people meant to keep me had priced me out. My bag had been the end of my childhood. Hers was 6 years old and already packed. Same family, same luggage, 1 generation apart. I didn't turn that carpet into a scene, didn't make a speech. A 6-year-old with a go bag has no use for either. I zipped it back up, slid it exactly where it had been, and said, "Okay. We'll keep it packed for now. It's yours, nobody touches it, and nobody forgets you here. But it stays your call, not theirs." She studied me a second, nodded, and went back to her cartoons. The backpack stayed under the bed. Remember it, this whole story ends with that backpack. Over the next weeks, in the low-stakes hours, braiding hair, 11-time cup drop championships, cartoons, Lily talked, the way kids do once the radar quiets. It came out sideways, in crumbs. That the casino Friday wasn't the first time. That there'd been other mommy weekends since she was 5, when she was in charge of locking the door. That she knew how to make 3 dinners, cereal, toast, cheese sandwich, no stove, because the stove was against the rules when she was alone. She said it all in the same logistics voice as the backpack thing. No drama, just facts. I sat on my hands, kept my voice boring and my questions open, and inside my chest something was being signed in permanent ink. Here's the thing about my job, I'm a mandated reporter. When a child tells a nurse she's been left alone overnight, repeatedly, at 5 and 6, the law doesn't have a family discount. And here's the thing about me, decided weeks earlier in Alvarez's checklist voice, daylight or nothing. I called Alvarez Monday morning and reported it formally. She scheduled Lily with a child interview specialist, the soft room, careful training kind, and Lily said it all again in her logistics voice. The county amended its case plan, parenting classes with attendance verified, visits moved to supervised only. By June, with the home study cleared, Lily's placement moved officially to my apartment. My phone rang at 11 that same night, the landline pulsing on the screen like a smoke alarm. I let it go twice. Third time I answered, and my mother's voice came through with no tears anywhere in it. "What did you tell them? What kind of sister are you?" I wrote that one down too. The collection was growing. What followed was a 2-part campaign I could have diagrammed in advance, having watched it run on other targets my whole childhood. Part 1, Honey. 3 days of pure warmth. A chicken casserole showed up outside my door with a note in her looping cursive about how proud she was of the woman I'd become. She texted a photo from the family album, me at 9, holding baby Vanessa's old doll in one arm and a dustpan in the other. Meant as nostalgia, as evidence. It was better proof than anything my lawyer would find later. Even the sweet talk told the truth, if you looked at what everyone in the pictures was holding. Part 2, right on schedule, vinegar. Sunday dinner, the whole extended family. I heard about it from my cousin Beth, half whispering on the phone afterward. My mother stood up over the pot roast and delivered the official version. Linda left home at 18 because she was selfish, broke her parents' hearts, and now, Lord willing, she'd been given one chance to redeem herself by helping her sister, and instead she was feeding the family to the government. Aunt June nodded along. My father, 2 chairs down, passed the rolls and said nothing. I'll be honest about what that did to me, picturing that table alone in my kitchen. It still burned. 23 years old, a badge, a license, a lease, and it still burned. But I'd learned something the county had been teaching me all spring. In that family, whoever told the story owned the truth. In a courtroom, the storyteller has to swear in. Vanessa came to my apartment exactly once that summer, unannounced, on a Tuesday evening while Lily was at a supervised library program. No makeup, it shocked me. She looked ironed flat, older than our mother somehow. And for the first time in my life, my sister sat at my table and said something true. "You think I chose this?" She was looking at her own hands. "They decided I was helpless when I was 10, Linda. You don't remember, you were 6 and busy being the other thing. Nobody ever made me finish anything, not school, not a job, not marriage, not..." She tipped her chin at Lily's drawing on my fridge and couldn't say her own daughter's name in that sentence. "At least your role came with a spine." Mine came with an allowance. I sat very still, watching the machine from a brand new angle, and it was the saddest view yet. 2 little girls, 1 house, 2 costumes handed down like sizes, mine stitched from responsibility, hers from helplessness, both fitted before either of us could read. For about 10 seconds I almost reached across the table. Then my sister, same breath, same tired eyes, showed me why the costume always wins. "So you owe me," she said, soft, reasonable. "Tell the caseworker Friday night was the first time. Tell them I had the flu, not the casino. They believe nurses. You're one of them. They'll take it from you." There it was. The honest minute was over. It had been an on-ramp. I said no, no explanation stapled to it, no apology cushioning it. The older I get, the more I believe that was the first complete sentence of my adult life. Vanessa stood, gathered her purse, and smiled a smile I knew from our mother's kitchen. "Then I guess I'll have to tell everyone what you've been doing." What I'd have been doing, per the family broadcast that followed, was stealing a child to punish my sister out of jealousy. I let it roll off. Then September came. Lily started first grade 6 blocks from my apartment, and on the second Thursday of the school year, at 2:50 in the afternoon, my phone rang at work, the school office, a voice too casual for its own sentence. "Ms. Myers, just confirming, Lily was picked up early by her mother." "That's authorized, correct?" The floor of the nurse's station tilted. It was not authorized. Vanessa was supervised only, and the school had the paperwork saying so, but the paperwork was in a folder, and the folder was only as strong as the newest clerk in the front office. And the woman at the desk that day saw a matching last name on a birth certificate and waved. I didn't drive around the city like a movie. I stood in a supply closet with my heart slamming and did it by the book, called Alvarez, called the non-emergency police line, gave plates, gave descriptions, said the words unauthorized removal and supervised visitation order. Then I did the hardest clinical skill I own, I waited. 4 hours. At 6:40 that evening, an officer called, located, both safe, food court at Eastland Mall. Vanessa had bought her a soft pretzel and a teddy bear, and when approached she was genuinely bewildered by the fuss, because in her weather system, it was just a mom treating her daughter to an afternoon out. Nobody's villain. That's what made it terrifying. When they brought Lily back to me that night, she walked straight past the new teddy bear on the counter, went into her room, and came back holding the pink backpack by both straps, hugging it to her chest like a life vest. Alvarez called at 9. Her checklist voice had something new in it, flat and final. "This changes the timeline, Linda. Temporary isn't going to protect her anymore." The county moved fast after the mall. Vanessa's visits were locked to a supervised visitation center, 2 hours a week, a monitor in the room. The school issued a new pickup card with photos. The principal apologized to me for 11 minutes. I told her the clerk was the least broken part of the whole system. But the important conversation happened across my kitchen table, where Alvarez, folder open, explained what temporary actually meant, and this is the fork in the whole road, so listen the way I did. As long as I was just a placement, the case stayed open, and open cases breathe. Every review, Vanessa got another 90 days to perform stability. Every relative got standing to petition. My parents were already asking about returning to a family arrangement, their phrase. There'd be a hearing in spring, and another after that, and Lily would live her whole childhood in 90-day increments with a backpack under her bed, waiting for the weather to change. Then Alvarez squared her folder. "There's a longer road, if you're willing to walk it." She meant filing for legal custody myself, going from the county's address on file to Lily's actual court-ordered person, petitioner, party to the case, on the record, under oath, against my own family, in a building with a flag in every room. I asked what happens to placements that stay temporary. She was quiet a second, and Dana Alvarez was never quiet. "Learn to keep the bag packed," she finally said. I looked down the hallway at Lily's door. "Some sentences don't persuade you." They just turn on the light in a room you were already standing in. Before I tell you what I filed, I need to tell you what that summer sounded like, because it's the exhibit nobody enters into evidence. 2 cereal boxes hitting the table every morning, because I always gave her the choice, choosing is a muscle, and hers had been in a cast her whole life. A 2 a.m. nightmare and my voice in the dark running the old nurse's drill, name 5 things you can see. Her small, furious concentration. Lamp, rabbit, door, my hand, your hand. The first time she laughed out loud, a cartoon moose, of all things, a big unguarded honk of a laugh that startled us both, and then she checked my face to see if laughing that loud was allowed, and whatever she found there, she did it again, louder. Her friend Maya down the hall, homework arguments, me learning that first-grade spelling lists are hills worth dying on. The backpack stayed under the bed. I kept my word, never touched it, and neither did she. Both facts mattered. But in August I heard the sound I've never told anyone until right now. She was on the phone with Maya, describing her weekend, and said, "At home, we made pancakes." Then caught herself, I watched it happen, this little stutter of the mouth, and corrected to "my aunt's home." A few days later, talking to the rabbit while she cleaned her room, she didn't correct it. I stood in the hallway with a laundry basket, not breathing. You can't put that in a court file. So the court file would just have to catch up. In October I sat in a legal aid office that smelled like burnt coffee, across from an attorney named Ruth Okafor, sliding scale, no wasted words, my kind of person. We filed a petition for legal custody of Lily Cole in Franklin County Juvenile Court. Attached, sworn before a notary, was my affidavit, the whole pattern, dates and numbers, no adjectives. The joint account and the $9,300. The gift paper I'd refused to sign at 18. The door. 5 years of silence. The phone call, not to reconcile, but to rent my clean record, in my mother's own cheerful words. The casino night. The earlier nights. The backpack under the bed. Ruth read my draft twice and looked up. "You understand what this does," she said. "It's not just testimony about Vanessa. It documents the household. Once it's filed, there's no version of this where you're the daughter who eventually comes home." I'd like to say I hesitated, because that would make me sound warmer. The truth is I thought about a 6-year-old correcting a home to my aunt's home like she'd been caught stealing, and I signed. And I noticed, the way you notice an old scar in cold weather, that this was the second piece of paper my family had ever put in front of me. At 18 they'd slid me a lie and a pen, and staying family was the price of signing. At 23 I picked up my own pen and paid the same price in reverse. The lie would have kept me a daughter. The truth resigned the position permanently, in triplicate. Ruth filed it on a Wednesday. Copies went to Vanessa and, because of the custody arrangement they'd been petitioning for, to my parents. I'm told the phone at that house started ringing before the envelope even hit the kitchen table. People ask why I didn't just take a quiet arrangement, keep everybody comfortable. Here's the thing about quiet arrangements in my family, I was one, for 18 years. If you're still with me, you already know why that signature mattered. Comment, packed backpack, if this is landing somewhere real, and subscribe, because the hearing is where 12 years of swallowed sentences finally got said out loud, under oath, into a microphone. The family went to war the way respectable families do, no bullets, all narrative. My Aunt June called to inform me that suing your own blood was a sin she personally could never imagine. 2 cousins unfollowed me, I survived it. My mother's church circle added Lily to the prayer list. Beth read me the wording, asking the Lord to soften the heart of the troubled young woman holding her niece hostage from her rightful family. Hostage, with a library card and a booster seat. The visit that took something out of me came on a Thursday in late October. A knock, and through the peephole, my father, first time in 5 years. He wouldn't come in. He stood in my hallway with his cap in his hands, looking past me at the kids' drawings on the fridge, and said his piece like a man reciting something practiced in the truck. I know it wasn't right. What happened with your money? 5 years, and there it finally was, at the exact moment it could still be spent on something. But your mother can't lose 2 daughters, Linda. Drop the affidavit. Settle it private. Keep it in the family. I asked one question, kept my voice as level as a countertop. Dad. Was it right or wrong, what you all did? Yes or no? My father, 58 years old, 35 of them married to the weather system running our house, looked down at my doormat and said, "That's not the point. There it is." I thought that was precisely, forensically, the point. He left an envelope on the hall table on his way out. No letter. 2 folded 20s. $40. The second installment, 5 years after the first. My father's entire vocabulary, and it still wasn't a sentence. November came at me in documents. Ruth and I built the file the way you build a case, exhibits tabbed, timeline clean. The ATM receipt from 5 years back came out of my plastic folder, uncreased, once, and Ruth held it up over her glasses. You kept this. I told her I'd carried it out of that house in a backpack the night I left. She put it under a tab without another word, but she typed faster after that. I want to be honest about what building that affidavit cost, because the pages look clinical and writing them was not. There's a specific ache in typing your childhood into numbered paragraphs, watching 18 years shrink to Exhibit C, feeling how small it looks against how much it weighed. Some nights I'd close the laptop and stand in the shower until the water ran cold. But here's a strange mercy of my profession: nurses chart symptoms, not feelings. Onset, duration, frequency. Turns out that's exactly the language a courtroom trusts, and I'd been training in it for years without knowing why. One night, deep in the drafting, I passed Lily's room and stopped the way I had that first weekend. She was asleep under the covers this time, blanket to her chin, one arm flung over the edge with the boneless confidence of a kid who expects the bed to still be hers in the morning. Her sneakers were in the closet. I stood in the hallway holding a laundry basket and let the water run down my face for a minute. Then I went back to the laptop and finished the paragraph about the casino, because progress in my line of work gets measured small. 8 days before the hearing, Vanessa got a lawyer. My parents paid for him, of course. There's always money in that family, the way there's always water somewhere in a desert. It just never surfaces on my side of the property line. He called Ruth with a settlement offer, and Ruth relayed it in her flattest translation voice. They'd agree to my custody uncontested, signed tomorrow, in exchange for Vanessa's visitation going unsupervised effective immediately, and my withdrawing the affidavit, all of it, the account, the door, the pattern, the household, scrubbed from the record as if unsworn. Their phrasing, Ruth said, was that the family didn't need old stories in a public file. I sat with it. I'll tell you the truth, it wasn't nothing. Ruth said so too. Trials are dice, and this would hand me custody without rolling them. I'd have Lily legally by tomorrow. All I had to do was let the record lie about the machine, and hand the machine 2 unsupervised days a week to run on a 6-year-old. I asked Ruth one question, a nurse's question, unsupervised starting when? She checked the letter and I saw it clear as a chart trend. Some ordinary Friday in February, a treat, an errand, a boyfriend, a casino across the county line, and a first grader locking a door behind her mother because those were the rules when she was alone. And, under some future bed, a bag repacked. I told Ruth I'd answer Monday and drove home the long way. That night, at the stove, not cooking anything, the phone rang. The house line. My mother had 1 card left, and she played it beautifully, no tears this time, and that's how I knew it was the real offensive. She talked a long while, and she was good, because everything she offered was a real thing that had really been withheld. Come home, she said. Sunday dinners, Christmas morning, you and Lily both, stockings on the rail. Your room is still your room. Vanessa will sign whatever the lawyers want. We can be a family again, honey. Starting Thursday. All you have to do is take the old stories out of the file. Families don't need judges, Linda. They just need one person big enough to let the past go. I stood at my stove, 23 years old, holding the phone with both hands, and I'm going to tell you the whole truth. Even the least flattering sentence in this story, I wanted it. Every cell. 12 years I'd stood outside the glass of that family, watching the kitchen light. And here was my mother, holding the door open at last, and the room behind her was warm and real. And the price tag hung exactly where it always hangs in that house, the truth retracted, the record scrubbed, the bill for all that warmth quietly forwarded, as always, to the smallest person in the family. This time, a 6-year-old with a go bag. My mother said my name again, gently, the way you coax someone off a ledge. So we'll see you Thursday. And you'll take care of that paperwork. I closed my eyes. I'll see you Thursday, Mom, I said, and hung up before she could hear which sentence I hadn't said. The rooms where lives change are always uglier than you'd think. Franklin County Juvenile Court, Thursday, 8:40 a.m. Waxed linoleum, buzzing fluorescents, a flag gone dusty at the fringe, a hallway of blue plastic chairs holding other families through the worst mornings of other years. Lily was at school, where 6-year-olds belong during hearings. Maya's mom had pickup covered either way. Because I plan for outcomes, it's the job. Our side of the hallway, Ruth in gray, Alvarez with her folders, Lily's guardian ad litem, a retired teacher who'd interviewed us twice. Their side arrived in a procession I heard before I saw, Vanessa in a small floral dress, my mother's costume choice, fitted one more time. My mother in church clothes, chin high, gripping my father's arm. My father in his funeral suit. Before the courtroom, one more stop, a conference room where the lawyers laid the settlement out for the record one last time. A table, a humming vent, a printed agreement squared in front of an empty chair, a pen laid diagonally across it, presentational, the way the gift paper had been laid out on a kitchen table 5 years and 2 lifetimes ago. My family does love setting a table for me. My mother looked at me across it, and I'll give her this, for a second, the look wasn't tactical. It was just her, asking. Vanessa's lawyer cleared his throat. Ms. Myers, have you considered our proposal? The vent hummed. Ruth's pen hovered. Everyone in that room waited to hear which daughter had walked in. No, I said. The affidavit stays in. Everything I have to say about my family, I'll say under oath, in the open, with everyone listening. That's the only kind of family conversation I do now. Nobody had a counter for that, because there isn't one. You can outmaneuver a scheme. There's no lever on a person who stopped negotiating in the dark. My mother's face closed like a shop for the night. We went in. Juvenile hearings aren't television, no jury box drama, just a tired judge, a court reporter, the slow machinery of questions. When my turn came, I raised my hand, swore, and testified the way Ruth had coached me, the way I'd charted my whole career, onset, duration, frequency. The joint account, dated. The $9,300, dated. The gift paper, and the door, dated. 5 years of no contact. The birthdays. The phone call, and the plan for my address, in my mother's own wording. Then Lily, the casino night from the county file, the earlier nights from the child interview, the pink backpack under a first grader's bed, stocked with raisins and a rabbit so it wouldn't hurt when they forgot her somewhere. The courtroom air changed on the backpack. It always does. Grand betrayals impress people, but the small logistics of a child's fear bend a room at the waist. Vanessa's lawyer came at me on cross with the family script almost word for word, and I watched the judge clock its age. Isn't it true you've resented your sister for years, and this petition is your revenge? I let it sit a beat. If I wanted revenge, I'd have stayed away. Staying away was working fine. That's when the script did the one thing I could never have engineered, it read itself aloud. Vanessa stood at counsel table, over her own lawyer's hand on her sleeve, and cried out to the judge, to the room, to the flag, "She's the strong one." She was always supposed to be the one who handles things. The gavel came down, but it was already in the record, my family's operating system, testified to in open court by its favorite child. Near the end, the judge took off his glasses. Ms. Myers, you're 23, single, shift work, first year in your career. Explain to me why you're asking this court for a child. I looked at my mother for 1 second, sitting very straight, purse on her lap like a shield, and realized I'd been waiting 12 years to answer a question she'd never once asked. I turned back to the judge instead and answered slowly, wanting to say it only once. All my life I was told I was the strong one. And in my family, strong just meant the one who pays. I've paid in money, and I've paid in years, and I'm done being strong like that. What Lily needs isn't the strong one. It's something better. I'd rather be the one who stays. The court reporter's keys ticked it into permanence, and the quiet after was the loudest thing my family ever gave me. Then a chair scraped, the loudest sound in this whole story, I mean that. My mother stood in the middle of the gallery. She didn't shout, shouting I'd have known what to do with. She smoothed her church skirt, took up her purse, and said, to me and the room and the record, in her dry closing voice, "You were born cold, Linda. Keep the child. You've finally taken everything." And she walked out. My father stood in stages, the way he does, and followed. At the door he turned and looked back at me for 1 second. I've spent years deciding what was in that look, and I've settled on this. It was an apology sized exactly like $40. The door eased shut on its piston hinge. No slam. That house always did prefer a quiet exit. I sat still, hands folded, and didn't go after them. I'd just won my daughter-to-be and lost my mother in the same 60 seconds, in front of strangers, under a dusty flag. Both permanent. Both mine. What was left went quickly, the way the important part of a surgery is somehow the quietest part. The guardian ad litem read her recommendation in a steady classroom voice. Placement with the aunt should be made permanent. The child was thriving, and then, closing her folder, added, in this observer's opinion, the child has finally unpacked. She had no idea what she'd said. Or maybe she had every idea. Teachers usually do. Alvarez testified to a stable placement and a completed home study, flat and factual, and when the judge asked her assessment of me, she read from the note she'd taken at my kitchen table back in April, the long one about why I left home at 18. So that's what the note became. I could have kissed her clipboard. The judge granted legal custody of Lily Cole to Linda Myers. Vanessa's visitation stayed supervised, with a written case plan attached, a real ladder back, if she ever chose to climb it. Classes, clean months, consistency. The same ladder offered every parent in that building. I want that noted. The court left her a door. So did I. Some machines you break. People, you leave a ladder. Outside, the November sky over Columbus was the color of a nickel. I sat in my car in the courthouse garage, the same seat where I'd laughed until my ribs hurt back in March, and this time I cried for about 90 seconds, one hand on the wheel, the other on the folder with the order inside. Then I blew my nose, fixed nothing about my face, and drove to Lincoln Elementary, because it was 2:40 and the pickup line forms early. Some doors close in a courtroom. The one that mattered was the passenger door of a Honda, opening at 2:55 for a kid with her hood up against the drizzle, asking what's for dinner. Here's the aftermath, measured honestly, because this channel doesn't sell lightning bolts. Vanessa came to the visitation center twice in December. Once, late, in January. By spring, some months she didn't come at all, and I'd sit in the parking lot with Lily's booster in the back seat, working out what to say, and Lily would buckle herself in and say it for me, "Mommy forgot again." Logistics voice, but quieter every time, and then one day, not quieter, just done. A fact filed under other facts. My sister isn't a monster. I need you to hear that from me, not the internet. She's what that house built, a woman handed helplessness as a job description at 10 years old, never once taught to finish anything, so she doesn't. The ladder the court left her is still bolted to the wall. She's never put a foot on it. My mother sent one card that first winter, cream-colored, her cursive steady as ever, "When you're ready to apologize, we are ready to forgive you." I read it twice at the counter, then filed it in the plastic folder, the one I'd carried out of that house at 18, right behind a 5-year-old ATM receipt for a balance of 0. Same handwriting on the ledger, if you know how to read it. I never wrote back. The invoice had finally reached a customer who'd closed the account. Then, an ordinary Tuesday in late spring, spaghetti on the stove, spelling homework on the table, Lily put down her pencil, walked to her room without a word, and came back dragging the pink backpack by one strap. I stopped stirring. She unzipped it on the living room floor like a surgeon opening a case, then dismantled it, businesslike. The 2 folded outfits went into her dresser, 3rd drawer. The toothbrush went to the bathroom cup. The raisins went to her shelf, the one with the blue stickers. Last, the rabbit with the worn ear came out and took up a new post on her pillow, facing the door, on guard duty now, instead of on standby. She hung the empty backpack on her doorknob and went back to her spelling like nothing had happened.